Hi, all. Thanks for being here today. Joining us here at Deborah Kobylt Live, we've got Jon Kean. You're the director of your latest film, After Auschwitz. Thank you so much for being here. I am so glad that I ran into you running around the track.
Literally.
In Brentwood,
literally
right?
ran
I mean,
into you.
I run into more interesting people running around that track in Brentwood.
And I scared the living bejesus out of you.
You did. You scared the living you-know-what out of me. And because you came up behind me.
You're right.
Who does that to a girl?
I recognized you.
You know, and of course you recognized me. But, you scared me, and then we started talking about this. Otherwise, right. I'm not sure I would have even known about it. So, we stayed on top of each other. Now here you are. You're promoting it all over.
Yeah, we opened 3 weeks ago in Toronto at Hot Docs. We were in New York the week after that. D.C., South Florida, Philadelphia. I think we're in 16 cities now with this weekend in L.A.
It's the journey of 6 women. Take it away.
Okay, so it's about literally you're free, go home. It's about the day of liberation. That people have been in camps for anywhere from 6 years to a year, and the soldiers come in, Allied soldiers, you're free, go home.
And then it's
what the heck do we do now?
Wait a minute.
Right.
And I told you, John's father was in a work camp.
Right.
He went to Auschwitz. He was not Jewish, but he went to Auschwitz, and they put him in a work camp because he was just a kid. Right. And that happened to him. They said, "You're free, go home." And he didn't know what to do with himself. And he was still just a kid, just a teenager.
And it's such a naive thing because, I never thought about liberation being bad. I always thought like, oh, you're free, that's a good thing, and now you move on with your life. It's very American. And the truth is, they struggled for years to feel like they were part of something.
Didn't you say there was one woman in particular? She went back to her house, and there were people wearing her clothes.
Right.
Tell me about her.
Well, no, people went back to. Sadly, it's specifically Polish, where it happened to my wife's grandparents. They went back home, and literally their neighbors are in their home, and they're wearing their clothes. And they're just like, we thought you were dead. Not like, oh, welcome home. Here's your stuff. We're keeping your bed warm. It was, no, this is ours now. You've been gone. It's ours. In Hungary, they're like, more of you came back than left. You're not getting your stuff.
You know, when we were in Poland 2 years ago, because we traced his journey and met his sister, it's almost like they're still feeling the pain from what happened to them. They really are. I felt that when I was in Warsaw, and people are still struggling to get past it. Even the generations behind them, it's such a horrible thing that happened to these people.
Poland is so complicated because, yes, Poland was occupied. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Poland, it was German-occupied territory.
Right. So
they're like, well, we didn't do it, and I'm sorry, we can't take Polish complicity out of what happened because...
No.
I get where they're coming from. Like in Germany, the younger generation in Germany says, we remember it. We do all this education. We do all these memorials. You don't have to keep hitting us over the head. We're ready to move on a little bit. At what point is it enough? And sadly, there isn't a point where it's enough. We have to continually work on this. Because we know that here people don't know.
Well, also look what else is going on around the world. And one of your own people in the film has actually said that. In fact, can we go to the clip? Do we have that ready? This is a great trailer. Take a look.
The day before liberation, we were digging our graves. That was the order.
They opened the gates and they said, "You're free."
Everybody gone. Nobody survived. Where do you start?
America was a dream for us. When the boat came close to the Statue of Liberty, we cried.
I came to Hoboken, New Jersey, and I said, "This is America?"
Whenever I mentioned anything about the concentration camps, stop, don't talk about it. You're now in America, forget it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Renee Firestone.
Those of us who survived the Holocaust were worried that soon our stories will be forgotten.
Things can get faded. Things can be forgotten.
Cambodia, Rwanda, Kosovo. Didn't people learn anything from World War II and from the Holocaust?
Film.
Thank you.
that reminded me, when you were a little kid growing up in Philadelphia, you said the gentleman, the father of one of your friends that you would carpool to school with, you would notice that he had those numbers on.
Right.
He was a survivor.
I was
that
8
must
or
have
9 years old.
That must have had a real impression on you.
I think it did, and I don't remember anything he said to. I remember he came to Hebrew school class and talked to us, but I don't know what he said. But clearly, it didn't scare us. Like sometimes we learn history and we're beat with it.
Yeah.
He must have engaged us in a way that really made at least me interested, because I still am.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It had some sort of something registered in there. But I mean, did he even try and hide it? I read once that people would try and hide that. They did, or no?
Yeah, you know, some people had them removed right away.
Yeah.
There's a great story in the film where Renee is holding the strap on the bus, and a soldier sees the tattoo and says, "Miss, what is that?" And she's with her daughter.
Yeah.
And she never told her daughter anything. So she says, "Oh, that's my boyfriend's telephone number. I was in the Navy and I put his number on my arm."
Wow.
And years later, the daughter, when she figures it out, says, "Remember that time? I knew you were never in the Navy."
Wow,
But even
she
didn't want to say it. But
wow.
now that number is something that, like Erica says, memories fade and facts fade. Like we don't really know what happens, or we're arguing over this or that. That number is proof of what happened. And when that number fades, does memory fade?
But the resilience of these people is outstanding, because that would bring down anyone. You know, now they're on a boat and they come to a new country, and sure, it's like, this is a new life, but geez, most people can't really pick up even after a bad breakup, let alone something like that, where your home was taken, most of your family was taken, and now you're just running around on your own. I don't know. Where does this resilience come from?
And with no support and with no way to process what happened to you. What they tell me is that you just were focused on that moment there. We're getting through this moment to the next day, to the next day. They didn't plan ahead. It was like, right now, this is what I need to do to survive. That survivor mentality just clicks in. This is what I have to do to get through this.
You know, we have all these great motivational speakers out there today. They're the greatest motivational speakers ever, because you're right. In order to survive and get through and have a thriving life of some sort, I like what you just said. You just do what you're doing in the moment,
Deb,
and go to the next one.
We were at a Q&A, and somebody asked Renee, and they said, you know, you dealt with so much, your life had so much hardship. How do you go on? How do you keep moving on from the bad stuff? And Renee looked at her and just said, "You're alive." She said, "You're alive. You have to have this belief that the next day will bring you what you're hoping for." It's like, it was so matter of fact, you're alive.
Well,
they value that.
Yeah, as again, going back to John's dad, you know, he grew up in such a tiny, tiny little house. And I remember when I first met his parents, I come from a very loud family who were Italian. And when I walked into his home, which was super tiny, they never spoke. I mean, never, ever, ever spoke. And I thought, do they speak? And he told me, he said, my father rarely speaks about anything. I think he was still a little shocked. And he was very proud that he came to America and, you know, had a job in a factory and was able to buy a home, you know,
right.
And
the
for
real
him,
American dream.
And that was that. And he spoke very little really of anything.
And you never, that's the other thing, you never can heal from something if you never address it. You can repress things as long as you want, but they're not gone, which is, I guess, a uniquely male phenomenon.
Could be, but
I meet a lot of survivors that do that, who've been through something and they just can't. So the children never get engaged that way.
Yeah, and he would
try. A little bit of
fear. And he would try. So that's why we made the journey to Poland to find that little teeny place where he was taken from.
You got to put your feet on the ground. I mean, you learn more by putting your feet on the ground.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you find these 6 women? And you said you didn't really seek women or men, or, well, one or the other. But it just ended up being that these 6 women had the best stories to tell.
I set out to make a film about laughter as a survival mechanism. As a survival
I like that.
tool in the camps.
Oh, boy, if that's not true. But in life, really.
But you take it to an extreme when you go to a camp. And it didn't work as a movie. I interviewed 18 people, 10 women, 8 men. Did not work as a movie because they remembered the laughter, but they didn't remember what they laughed at. So I always say it's like my mom telling jokes. It's 5 minutes of build up and then they forget the punchline. Mm-hmm. That's what it was like. It's like, this is not fulfilling. It's like, can we finish? So I needed to make a movie out of it. And the stories of women stood out because
We are good
no,
storytellers.
remember this BS in the news the other day that women are more emotional. No, women are not more emotional. Women can access their emotional depth. And that's
Yeah,
a
we
plus.
feel things and
Right,
we're
that's
able to
and you
articulate
communicate
it.
Right, that's a. I don't know.
What do you
why,
guys do?
That's a plus. We sit there. This is how hard I worked. This is where I went. This is where we were. Like,
Really, guys?
That's not a good film.
No.
The women. There's one story in the first film, in Swimming in Auschwitz, where the woman talks about the dress they gave her, and she says it was a short black dress with little ruffles around the edges.
Now,
And I'm like, no man will say that. No man describes ruffles. unless
You're
it's potato
right.
chips.
Oh my God! I'm going back to another thing. I mean, I rarely talk about John on this show. My John,
That's
you know
'cause I
where
know
he
him.
went.
That's
Yeah,
the
because you know.
problem, yeah.
No, but we were talking about a bed skirt years ago, and he goes, "What is a bed skirt?" Because you're right, guys don't talk about ruffles or bed skirts
I
or
had
things
the bed
like
skirt
that.
conversation with my wife too.
You
when
did?
We got
Nobody
married. Yeah, it's
even
like,
uses
bed
them
skirt. What's a bed skirt?
A bed needs a
We
skirt.
got to put something there.
So I know what you're saying. It's like we just dig a little deeper.
But that's what makes the women's story. Look, first off, that's what makes those stories great. And second, we never hear stories of war from women point of view, female voices. And it was something new. And people are like, oh, why we have another Holocaust story? Well, this is a new story. This is a different voice.
Give us one or two that for people who haven't seen it yet, because I know right now it's showing in Los Angeles and in about 16 other cities.
Right. Yeah, we open this Friday in LA at the Laemmle Music Hall in Beverly Hills and Town Center 5 in Encino.
Right. So tease it for me a little bit. A couple of stories that these women have told that'll really get you.
Well, I mean, there's a really emotional one that I care about, which sort of set me off on this path. That idea of where is home, and she talks about, I lived 14 years there. Why is that more important than my life now? And then she says, but you have one foot here, one foot here. So when you're homesick, you don't know where you're homesick for. That idea of where do we belong, where do we fit in? It's so sad. But it's so true. They're just trying to find a connection. But one of my favorite crazy things is a woman who's here. She barely speaks English. She gets a job as a nanny for Ricardo Montalban. Exactly, in the early 50s.
Wait, hang on. When Ricardo was little, or when Ricardo
was
needed
stunning, sexy, and happening. Ricardo and Lana Turner. Ricardo in the 50s, he was a sex symbol.
So she was a nanny for their
kids?
kids?
He was Armand Asante before there was an Armand Asante.
Gotcha. That was in the previous show where I said that I have this massive crush on him. But wait a minute.
So she goes to interview, and it's Georgietta Young was his wife, Georgiana, and she can't speak English. So her cousin says, she doesn't speak English. And she says, that's okay, my husband doesn't speak good English either. And it's this amazing story. The survivor is now working and meeting Clark Gable, meeting, these amazing
Man, they went to the
icons.
right nanny service.
But it's like, and she's this little woman from Amsterdam. She just walked into it by accident.
Look,
It's
they had a
crazy.
resilience
Right.
that was just...
And they knew. She walked into an office and said, I want to work with babies. And she got a job.
Don't you find in life, regardless of what side of the track you come from, if you just show up and ask, even if you get the door, slammed in your face so many times, eventually one's got to open. It's about resiliency.
Well, you ask about why they're the way they are, and that's part of it. They knew when to
Yeah.
take a risk. They knew when to ask. They knew when to speak up and when to step back. There's an innate ability to know when to speak up.
And when to step back. You're right about that. A lot of people don't know when to step back.
Yeah.
They just keep going.
Because we're American.
Isn't that true? Oh my
what we do
God,
as
you're so right
Americans
about
is
that.
We voice our opinion when we are wronged. And sometimes when we're wronged, we're really not all that wrong.
Yeah, oh my God, you are so astute about that. You're right. And then we never shut up. And then we become arrogant, right?
Absolutely. And until you travel to countries that don't have real freedoms, made a movie in Ukraine. And when you're in Ukraine, where people are like, I'll tell you my story, but we got to turn the camera off. We can't let anybody know that my grandfather was Jewish. The neighbors can't find out. I'm like, the war was 70 years ago, and they're concerned over that. We don't understand it until we get out of our own little bubble here in America.
And we are in a bubble.
Oh, yeah.
And I always say to people, even when I had like zero money, I would scrape up something to just try and travel anywhere that wasn't in my own lane.
Think of all the people that live in America that have not been to, like you're in LA, I've never been to New York, or you're in New York and you've never been to Chicago. That's a reality in our country. People do not get out of their state, let alone their city.
Well, that's why we're in the mess we're in and
It's
why we
one of
have
the
such
reasons.
political divide.
And that's what this film does. This film is communication, because we talked about this too before. This film, to me, is all about connecting with one another. And we talk about what is our goal with people and our kids now, and it's empathy. And to me, that's what this does. This film is that path to empathy. It's that guide to how we connect. And if we don't have to agree with each other, but we have to be able to connect in some meaningful way.
Connection. You're
Yeah.
right about that. You're pretty good for a guy.
I work with women.
Considering
I've
what
worked
we
with
just
women
talked
for a
about.
lot of years.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. I didn't know that side of you on the baseball field.
Well,
You were
when
just
we're
some
around our kids,
baseball
we're very-
dad.
I know.
Yeah, we were friendly from before this interview because our kids played baseball together when they were little.
So we just spent 5 hours watching little boys run around, fixing their jock straps for no reason whatsoever because they were 11.
Is your kid still playing?
Joseph's playing lacrosse. They just won their league championship this year. Had a great season.
Oh,
Scored
that's
like
wonderful.
70 points. He had a
Yay.
great. Yeah, he loves it. He was captain as a junior.
Oh, that's great.
Brag on my boy.
No, why not?
But baseball is great. They trained him. Baseball taught them for those quick hands.
Yeah, I mean, mine still lives, eats,
he loved
and
it.
breathes
He loved
it.
But James loved it.
Yeah, James will be playing until he takes his last breath when he's an old man. I mean,
But
that's
how
just,
wonderful is that we find something that we love for these kids? It'd be
what
nice
it's
if
about.
calculus were one of the things they loved, or like U.S. history.
stats.
It'd be, something that
No,
actually.
he likes stats. He actually loves stats. I'm
Yeah,
like,
Joseph
really?
loves fantasy football. If there were a major in fantasy football, he would be the king of the world.
Back to your film for a minute.
I'm sorry,
though.
we got lost.
That's okay. You can always talk about the kids.
Yeah.
But these 6 women, have they become friends after doing? Now, clearly, you probably interviewed them at different times.
Correct. They didn't know each other before.
Right,
They
of
didn't know
course.
each other in L.A. Some of them peripherally knew.
Okay, and I like the fact you also didn't plan that these were 6 women who were in Los Angeles.
No, that I did.
Oh,
because
that you
I
did?
couldn't afford.
Oops.
I had to only interview people in L.A. So I talked to 300 survivors in L.A. on the phone to get the 18 on camera. I couldn't travel with a crew. I mean, this is like
Bare bones.
It ain't low budget. It's no budget.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a no-budget film to me. It's
This second one
beautifully produced.
Thank you. This second one we had a little more. The first one, swimming in Auschwitz, was tougher.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, it's your first get out,
Right.
swimming in Auschwitz.
Yeah.
So have they gotten to know each other, and do they go on all
Sure.
the press tours?
We've
and how's
done
that
stuff
working?
together. We've done stuff together. What I've learned is I'm very protective of them, and they're a little protective of their relationship with me. So I try to don't bring
a little jealousy
yes,
brewing.
I try not to bring multiples to an event. Because I thought, it's great, 3 of us will go, and it's like a bad Robert Downey movie. When
Oh, my
him
God.
and the 2 girls. I don't remember the 2 guys and a girl, whatever it was. It doesn't go well.
No.
So we travel just.
Don't let
me-
them see
me
this
and-
interview. You don't want them to hear that.
Oh, they know.
Oh,
they
really?
would admit it in a second.
Maybe they'll just say, "Oh no, he's really not going to come, so you don't have to show up." Meanwhile, the other one shows.
Hysterical. I mean, like
That's
Renee
the
just
funniest
turned
thing.
94. It's the same thing. Like I'm so jealous of her. I'm like, you're going out with another director? I'm like, Renee is friends with Steven Spielberg. I'm like, Renee, who's your favorite? Come on, Renee, who's your favorite? She'd be like, okay, you are. Thank you.
Oh, that's adorable. You like the older ladies, I see. It's kind of cute.
Yeah.
So, where else are you? Other cities? New York?
Yeah, we're all over the eastern seaboard, from Florida up to Toronto. We are everywhere. If you go to our website, which is afterauschwitz.com, everything is on there. The exciting thing is L.A. because this film, like I said, the second half of this film is L.A.
Yeah.
And we kind of sneak you into it because we show L.A. in the second half of the 20th century. We show the the Coke commercial, and everyone buys a Chevy, and the 60s and the color of the picture. We bring you in with things that you recognize, and you feel at home with it, and then you see it all through the eyes of the survivor. And all of a sudden you're like, it disrupts you a little bit. So it's been referred to as sort of sneaky, and I kind of get that now. Like the reviewers I'll bring up, it's sneakily profound or brings you in this way because we give you something that you know. And then we twist it around and show you from a different point of view. Because the goal is to show that different point of view.
These women must have been very scared, though. But what do they
Yeah.
have that was in common with these 6 people? Would you call it the resilience? Would you call it laughter? You said initially
they
you
all
tried to
had that. I
find
think-
laughter.
I think how you go through bad times dictates how you will overcome the bad times later. They all went through the bad times knowing that they weren't alone. They found a camp sister, camp mother, somebody to help you. They knew that they had to keep their mind, their humanity, laughter, art, music, whatever kept you strong, so that when you're out, you still know how to retain that humanity. I think they all have that. They were always able to see others as people. They focused anger where it was helpful, not just to be angry all the time.
And also, one of the women said, and this is still happening out there.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, in Auschwitz. It's still happening. And we are still turning our backs to it. I mean, people aren't really paying attention.
I mean,
and it's happening.
I try not to be overly political because people are like, oh, it's happening in Poland and Austria, this far right. I'm like, in our own country, we can no longer agree that Nazis are bad. You know, in Charlottesville, we're talking about good people on both sides. And I'm sorry, there's no good Nazi.
But I'm not even talking Nazis. I'm spreading it out around the world.
Yeah.
Look what's going on in Sudan and
It's
so many
everywhere.
other places.
But
it's everywhere. And, you know,
we try to take it away from our own country and say, look at them. No, everybody is dealing with this. This is a universal thing right now. Nobody is communicating.
look, for too long, people were turning their backs on what Hitler was doing.
And we
people
knew.
knew. That's why I say one of the
Yeah.
women in the film, she brought it up and she said it's going on other places too. And she brought up
Right.
Sudan, a very
Right.
smart woman. And in other words, it didn't just happen to us. It's happening everywhere
Right. And
else.
then they had no idea that Armenia happened.
Right.
So they find out after the fact, wow, it happened to other people.
Yeah.
Like, this has been a phenomenon that's been going on for, sadly, too long.
Think, people.
Yes,
Outside
connect.
of your lane a little bit.
Yeah.
Think and connect, like we did jogging
Right.
down San
So
Vicente
come to
Boulevard.
the movie, L.A., Beverly Hills, Encino. Go to our website, afterauschwitz.com.
After Auschwitz, you can look it up, afterauschwitz.com. And this Friday in Los Angeles.
Right, we open. We have guest speakers. Survivors will be speaking at screenings. Other guests in L.A. will be coming. We've got a lot of great stuff going on. So
Okay,
please do
wonderful.
come.
Thank you, Jon
Thank
Kean,
you,
for
Deb.
joining
It's
us.
great
This
to
is a lot of
spend time
fun.
with you.
And thanks for being here, everybody. Another interesting edition of Deborah Kobylt Live. We'll see you next time.